Hi friends, welcome back to Sewing with Sin. The last post that I just shared with y'all was making this shirt. I'm almost finished with it. This is the Kalle Shirt, the version B. So this is the shirt that I've been working on with the popover placket right here. And I only have one more step to go with this shirt. And so I wanted to show you, I have it on right now on top of my other shirt because I'm getting ready to fit the buttons. So if you need support with putting on buttons, that's what this will be all about today. And I've done buttons several times, so this isn't something that I'm just figuring out, but I'll just show you the process for how I sew them. It might be different on different sewing machines. I have a very basic sewing machine, so I'll show you what that looks like. And then I just wanted you to start gathering tools that you might need if you're doing this with me. So you're going to need some buttons. I just have, I like to use, I prefer wood over plastic. So I got some wood buttons. And then you need a tool for tracing where your buttons will go. And then you need either a seam ripper or I recently got a buttonhole, I don't know what this is called. I think it says it back here what it's called. A buttonhole chisel, that's what it's called. A buttonhole chisel. This is pretty awesome. I finally got that because I had been using a seam ripper and one time I accidentally ripped too far. Like I ripped open the whole buttonhole. This is gonna be really cool. So I'll show you how to use this tool. So you'll need those three things. And then what I've already done is I put on the shirt right now and I've kind of marked where on the placket that I want my buttons to go. So let me show you that. Okay, so here's my placket. And you just have to decide where you want your buttons to go, or you can follow the pattern. It has pre-markings. What I like to do first is I've pinned it every 2 inches, starting from the bottom. I went 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, and sorry, I went all the way up to here. You could go up to the top. I just know that I'm not ever gonna pin mine up to the top. I probably wouldn't even button this one right here, but I'm just gonna put a button there anyway. And then what I always check for is this cleavage area, right? That like when I open or if I stretch, that the button is in a good place, that like nothing's gonna pop open right here. And I kind of tested that, everything looks okay. Plus this shirt is pretty loose, so you shouldn't really have that problem unless you made it to fit a little bit tighter. So I've pre-marked that with my pins, and now I'm gonna go take off this shirt and put little markings with my chalk. So now you'll wanna get whatever marking tool you have. This is not gonna work very well for me. I really wish I had one of those washable fabric tools, but I'm gonna just do my best with what I have. So I kind of put a little mark right there, and I also know that it's on that white line. And then your, just for reference, your button is going to go under here, and this is where you're going to be sewing the hole on top. But you need to measure your button, so when you sew the hole, it's the right size. So what you will do is get your chalk or your whatever tool you have and put a little mark above the button and put a little mark below the button, and then you're gonna draw a straight line across. So it should look like the capital letter I. I'm gonna put my phone down and show you what that looks like in just a second. It should look something like this. And my button would go right there. And that straight line in the middle is where I'm going to be sewing up and down that buttonhole. So you also just want to make sure that that line right there is centered to your placket. So the placket is about 1 inch from this shirt, at least, not all shirts, but for the Kalle shirt, the placket I measured is about 1 inch. And then you want to check to make sure that that line in the middle is at 1/2 inch. So mine is pretty spot on, and you're gonna do that same thing for the rest of your buttons. So I've drawn all of my capital letter I's, and I highly recommend using a fabric marker because it's so much harder with chalk because you're trying to draw a really thin line and I have these really thick lines, but I'm just gonna make it work. And now I'm gonna take this over to the machine. So first step is you're going to need to change your presser foot to put on your button foot. So this is what mine looks like. It has the letter B in the back, and it has all of these lines right here. I'm not sure what those lines are for. I don't even reference those for anything. But then make sure that whatever thread you're using is the thread that you want, because you're going to be able to see this thread. And then I'm going to push this all the way to the back. And then here's how basic my sewing machine is. This is how many stitches it has. And these are my button stitches right here. So I'm going to start at step 1. Okay, this is going to be a little tricky for me to record to get in here close enough, so I'm going to do my best first to show you what I'm about to do, and then I'll put my phone on the tripod. Okay, so first step is I'm going to line up the point of my needle to the bottom of this line. Oh, by the way, right now I'm starting at, this is the top of my shirt, I'm starting with my top button. So the way that it's going to sew, it's going to go from the bottom to the top. So you want to start your needle down here. So I'm lining up my needle with that bottom line, and then I'm going to put my needle down. So I'll be right back for that. Okay, this is as zoomed in as I could possibly go. So I hope that's okay for you. I hope you can see the process. So then on my machine, I put it on step 1. Step 1 means it's going to go from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to go straight from that bottom part of the letter I to the top straight line. And I just have to be really careful and watch to see when does that line come at the top, because that's when I'm going to stop. You don't want to go too far, because then the buttonhole will be too big. I'm just going really slow because I'm having a hard time seeing where my chalk is at. Okay, then once I finish making that straight line all the way up for the button, I'm going to bring my needle up, and then I'm going to turn my, let me zoom out so you could see. I'm going to turn my wheel over here to step 2. So I just moved it over to step 2. Then what it's going to do is it's going to make a line across to mark the bottom of the button. So it's not going up and down, it's just going across back and forth right now. And I'm going to do that about 5 or 6 passes. Then raise your presser foot. I'm sorry, not raise your presser foot. Don't do that. Raise your needle, and then move your, I'm moving my knob over to step 3. I wonder what other machines do when you're doing buttonholes. I'm curious to see if it's this simple. Now it's going to make the line going straight down on the opposite side. And I'm going down all the way to that straight line that I made earlier. Then raise your presser foot up again and put your knob back to number 2. It says 2/4, so I'm on step 4 right now. Again, it's gonna do that bottom closure. So I know you can't really see it because the presser foot, because the buttonhole foot covers up the work that I'm doing right now, so you can't see it. Okay, then I did it a few passes, and that's the end of that. So I raised my needle, and I'm gonna pull it out and show you what that looks like. Here's what it looks like. So the first thing that it did is it went all the way straight up. Then the second thing that it did is it marked that closure at the bottom. Then the step 3 was going down this side, and step 4 was closing that up right there. You could, I don't really do this because I don't really ever have a problem with my buttonholes unraveling, but there's a string, that very final piece of thread when you pull the needle out. You could, and maybe I could show you that for this one at the end. You could pull that thread back around to the back and then like tie it in a knot just to make sure that the buttonhole doesn't come undone. And then I'll just check to make sure like that the sizing looks okay. That looks pretty good. Let me show you what to do next. You'll need, if you have a seam ripper, what you'll do, I'm not going to use this because I have this new fancy tool, but you will, before you even rip anything open, you'll want to put a needle, hold on a second. Okay, sorry, I'm working with one hand holding a camera and one hand doing this. You'll want to put a needle right here. The reason why is because when you poke a hole right here at the bottom and you pull it through, it's going to rip this fabric open, but you don't want it to accidentally rip all the way past this line right here. So this kind of like prevents you from going any further. But also when you do it, just be really careful to go nice and slow when you're ripping that hole open. But I'm going to show you this, what was it called again? Button chisel. Let me move this out of the way. So the button chisel is really cool because you just put the sharp point of this like directly in that open space in between, and you just press down really hard. I think this is also used for leather making too. And I kind of go like back and forth a little bit too. Oh, I like that sound of the cutting of the fabric. Now let's see what it looks like. Okay, so it looks like I could maybe cut a little bit more right there, and then I'm going to test it to see if the button will go through it too. It should, if I measured it correctly. Again, I can't really do it with one hand, but, or maybe I could. I tested it to make sure. Does the button actually go in the hole? And yep, it does. Now, I was reading and I thought this was interesting because I was wondering, like, how do you prevent the fabric? Do you see a little bit how it's a little bit frayed right there? I wonder, and if you know anything, let me know in the comments. I wonder if there's anything to prevent that fabric right in the middle where you cut it from fraying. Because I saw right here in the back it says, finish with fray stop to prevent buttonholes from fraying. Fray stop, I've never even heard of that. So I don't know, maybe it's, I have no idea what that is. I'm gonna have to do a little research, but that would be really helpful, especially if you make a lot of shirts with buttons. Eventually, like it will just continue to fray a little bit more right there. So now I'm gonna finish 3 more buttons, and I will come back over to show you what it looks like when it's all finished. Oh, actually, you know what? I take that back. I need to do 3 more buttonholes, and then I'll show you what it looks like to sew on the button on the opposite side of the placket. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but I don't know, maybe you've never sewed a button before, so I'll show you how I do that. I wanted to show you what you could do with the end of that thread. When you're finished with your buttonhole, you would save that last piece of thread. Don't clip it too long. And then what I just did right now is I wrapped it through this needle, and then I'm going to bring this thread poke it through here and bring it to the back of the shirt. And I'll be right back when I'm on the back of the shirt. Now I'm on the back side of the shirt. I just threaded it through. And then what you'll do is thread around, I'm trying to do it with one hand, thread, I think I'm able to do it, thread around through all that other thread, pull it through just enough, and there should be a little loop right here. Do you see that little loop? I'm going to then bring the needle through that loop. Oh, I didn't think it was possible with one hand, but I think I'm able to do it. When you bring it through that loop, it's making a little knot. So then I'll pull it tight, make that little knot, and then you could just clip the extra thread. I don't think it would have had that extra little piece right there if I was using two hands, but then that just secures everything so nothing accidentally comes undone right here. My final step that I like to do is just give it a really good press after you've sewn all those holes. I feel like it just helps set all of those seams right there. And I'm pressing each buttonhole really well. That also helps remove some of the chalk that was on here. And then if you were using chalk and it's still on there, that's okay. You could just, that comes off with water, no big deal. Okay, now I'm gonna start sewing my buttons. I just lined everything up. I closed my placket, made sure that the collar is lined up and the bottom, there's no puckers anywhere. Because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my drawing tool and just go inside that little hole and make a mark, because that's where my button's gonna go on the opposite side. You see how it made that little mark right there? So I'm gonna go down and make little marks all the way down so it matches on the opposite side and you're putting the button in just the right spot to fit in that hole. All right, friends, so now I just got a piece of thread and I threaded it on the needle. So it's all ready to go, knotted it at the bottom down here. And I have my first button placed right in the middle of that placket, right on the mark where I marked it. So I'm gonna hold that in place and put my needle underneath. You always wanna start under, so you don't accidentally have like that raw end of the thread in the front. You want it in the back. And then there's 4 holes in that buttonhole. 4 holes in the button, not the buttonhole. And it's always a little tricky, like finding the first one. There we go. And I'm pulling my thread from the back to the front. And then I'm just gonna check the back to everything looks good. I can trim that excess thread off afterwards. So then you're gonna just keep holding it in place. Uh-oh, I think my thread just came all the way through. Let me see. No, I think it's okay. Let me just, it looks a little, oh, there we go. Okay, so then keep holding it in place because it's still wiggling around. So make sure that it's still in the center and it's on that mark that you marked. And then go to one of the other holes in the button. There's 4 of them. So just kind of crisscross if you want, or, you know, you can do whatever you want when you're going through those holes. Then I'm coming around the back again, and I'm just gonna keep doing that, going back and forth, in and out. I don't know how many times I do it, but I'm doing it enough so the button feels secure. And I'm also gonna make sure that the button's not so tight on the shirt that it doesn't have any wiggle room. And what I mean by that is you want to be able to move it up a little bit to get it into this hole. If you sew it super tight on the shirt, it's going to be hard to lift it and put it in. So just be mindful of that too. And I'll be back when I'm done with these. I forgot I wanted to show you too how to finish the button. So I'm going to do one last stitch through my buttonholes right here. And right now I'm on the back side, so I'm going to come around through the front end again. And here's my needle poking out through the front end. And before I pull it all the way through, I'm going to grab, this is the back end. I'm just going to grab, what is happening here? It's like not, there we go. Okay, so this is the back end. I'm gonna grab a piece with my finger like this. So I'm gonna get ready to make a knot. So I'm just holding it like this in the back. And in the front, I'm gonna go through like I normally do, through that front hole. And then when I bring it around the back end, let me flip it over to the back so you could see. So now here I am on the back end. Here's that piece that I was holding still. So I'm going to keep pulling, and now I'm going to bring it through that hole, loop it through the inside of that hole to make a knot, and then pull it all the way through. So I'm just making sure it's super secure. And then I do one more little knot. Hopefully you could see what I'm doing here. I just kind of thread it through a little tiny piece of the fabric right there. I'm threading it through where all of that thread is at already. And again, I'm holding my fingers on this side to bring it through the hole and tighten it. And there it is. It's a nice secure knot back there. And then I'll trim off this extra thread, and it should just be one. Careful not to trim so much off that you're cutting all the thread that you just worked so hard to hold the button together with, but trying to get that one tiny piece. There we go. And that's kind of what the back should look like after you finish your knots. I have 2 more to go, and I'm almost done. And here's the finished product. I will probably not button up those top 2. I don't know, I might, we'll see. They might just be decorative. So it's all finished.